As you can tell, I love cameras. I love cameras because I love the film business. And speaking of the film business, there are credits and tax benefits in the film business like there are in no other industry, maybe the oil industry. And it's a good thing because film business is risky if you don't know how to manage it as a film business. And by managing it as a film business is being able to leverage the tax benefits that you get in the film business. So by leveraging the tax credits, it actually makes the film business relatively safe. In the film business, the taxation structure is much different than your typical business. Maybe you'll get a lot of benefits in businesses like real estate, oil, there's other businesses I'm sure, but the film business itself, because tax jurisdictions want to attract capital and they want to attract free advertising basically for their location, that they give tax incentives to production companies so they can shoot in locations there. So for example, like Atlanta and Georgia, New York, certain states, Texas has some, Alabama has some, Florida used to have, but they no longer have these tax incentives, these tax credits, and it pretty much overnight killed the industry because the tax credits are pretty significant. We're not talking about 5% here, we're talking about 10, 20, 30% of the budget, up to 40% of the budget. So for qualified expenses. So if you know how to use these tax benefits, these tax credits, you can actually pay off a significant portion of the film investment just on taxation benefits. So for example, one benefit you get is that you're able to write off the entire production. If you have a $1 million production, you can write off $1 million when that production is completed and it goes out for distribution. In other words, it starts to make money. It starts being out there in the movie theaters or on video on demand, on DVD, however you start making sales. That's the year that you can write off the entire investment. So if you invest $1 million in a movie, boom, you can write off $1 million. Secondly, the tax credits, if you have $1 million that you spend on a movie, and let's say you shot the whole thing in New York, you would be able to get 30% of the film back in tax credits, and those tax credits are very liquid because all you have to do is find someone else who can benefit by buying tax credits, and it will lower their taxes. So you can sell it for, let's say, 95% of the value of the tax credit amount. So if you have a $300,000 tax credit from New York City, you can sell that for, let's say, $270,000. Some jurisdictions have also tax rebates, and the tax rebates are the best because they would give you an exact the total amount, so you don't have to go ahead and resell the tax credit like you do in certain states. With tax rebate, and I don't have the jurisdictions I have, but you can look that up. You pretty much get a check right from the government to cover their expenses. And the governments want this because they are getting free marketing for their jurisdiction. So if you're at Atlanta, a lot of people know more about Atlanta now because a lot of shows are being shot in Atlanta, so that it drives more tourism. And another thing that they like is the fact that it brings tax, there's money that's going to be spent in the local economy by the actual production. So if a company goes and they spends $1 million in Atlanta, that's $1 million that trickles into the economy, sales taxes that are going to be collected, and on and on and on. So there's a lot of benefits for jurisdictions to incentivize production companies in order to attract that capital into the state or into the city. You have to know how to use and leverage these tax benefits in order to write off your production, to write off your production costs. So if you have $1 million that you can write off the bat, automatically, if you're not in the highest tax bracket, you can save 30-40% of your taxes depending on what state. If you're in New York City, if you're a New York City resident, you're close to 50%. Same thing with certain parts of California. Just right off the bat. So you can write off the $1 million of profit, write it off as an expense. And then you get another 20, 30% back from the state. So on $1 million production, you're getting a check for another $200,000 or $300,000. So you can have more than 50%, 50, 60, 70% of the film just on taxes, on the benefits. And the last portion that you want to collect to cover that gap with the amount that you're at risk for, is for the production to be pre-sold. So if you can pre-sell the production to certain markets, like you would sell to France, or you would sell to Germany, sell to England, Canada, the UK, wherever, and you can cover that amount, you're pretty much at that point, if you're able to pull that off, you're at zero risk. And that's what makes it so attractive, because you can finagle it in such a way where you're not going to take a risk like you would take a risk in another businesses. Watch Wishman! There are other ways you can also raise money, like you can do sponsorships as well within the production. So let's say you have companies, you can pretty much companies can market through your movie. For example, Wells Fargo, in movies that are taking place in the 1800s. Sometimes production companies approach Wells Fargo, and because Wells Fargo was around, it was a bank that was around that time, and so we say, are you interested in going into advertising in this film as being the bank in the 1800s? Because it does match, it has historic accuracy, and also it's a way for Wells Fargo to get advertisement, because they're going to get more eyeballs on the bank, and people are going to realize, wow, this bank's been around there for such a long time. So those are different ways that production companies cover their costs and protect their investors' investments by using these points with tax credits, tax write-offs, sponsorships, and of course pre-selling in markets. That's what makes the movie business so exciting. Not all production companies do, because it's not something, a lot of creatives, they love movies, I love movies, I like making movies, I like the creative process behind that, and there's a lot of people that think that way, and they're not focused on the actual film business. And being focused on the film business is what's going to allow you to keep producing movies, because if the movies, they cover themselves and everyone makes a return on their money, they're going to keep reinvesting. And because without that mechanism, you make one movie and you don't make any money, you don't protect your investors' money, the entire thing comes to a screeching halt, and that's not good for anyone, for the creative team and the investors, obviously. So when you do invest in a movie production, in a movie film, you want to look at the business plan and make sure that those elements are outlined in order to protect your investment in the film business. Thank you.